Hello and welcome everybody to Brew, Milwaukee Brewers chatter from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. My name is JR Radcliffe, host of the show. On the other line, the one and only Curt Hogg, my colleague at the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. He was there this weekend to watch the Brewers take a couple games against the Cincinnati Reds. They won 2 of 3, and holy smokes, they won 5 in a row. They sweep the Braves. They get 16 or more hits in all 3 games. They absolutely dominated the Atlanta Braves, which is a playoff team. They're free falling a little bit, but they are a playoff team. And then just kept it rolling with the games against Cincinnati. The offense flipped a switch. And Curt, I feel like I need to go back to last week's podcast, maybe the one before that, maybe the one before that, maybe
What
overdub
podcast?
some things. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Which podcast last week?
Thank goodness we haven't actually had a
I
podcast in the last 6 weeks.
I don't remember it because I was at an airport, and you don't
In
remember
Baltimore.
things that you do at an airport.
It's a good thing because we said some things. I think, maybe in the moment they felt fine. After the fact, they look maybe not quite as fine as before.
I regret nothing. I'm not a man who lives with regret. What I said. I don't even know if I said anything all that.
Yeah.
Generally, that's you. That's generally you who's sort of flaming things at the wind and allowing it to go whichever way it lands.
I
And
do
then I have
try
to talk you down.
Yeah, I do try to dial it up a little bit when things are not going well because Curt, I'm going to be real honest with you. I've never seen the Milwaukee Brewers go to the World Series. In my lifetime. It has happened in my lifetime. I was very young, very young. I've never seen it. So when you see things that are maybe not promising that eventually they'll get there, you start to be like, huh. Well, I've seen this part where they aren't good, but I've never actually seen them go to a World Series. So at some point, you'd like to think, is that ever going to happen? And, why are they doing the same things that they did last year and the year before that and the year before that and the year before that and the year before that? You start to feel like maybe this is just the pattern that's going to be.
Well,
So,
okay. Well, I will say the one thing. Well, first off, sounds like a Taylor Swift lyric.
which one?
I think I've seen this film before,
I believe
and
you
I did
used
not
it
like the
in your
ending.
Twitter thread. Did not like the
Have
ending.
I used that? I don't think I have.
I don't know,
I
Curt.
don't think it's really applicable to a baseball stadium. Well, maybe if they go to like the Dodger Stadium for the playoffs this year, then we've seen that film before.
I want to say, Curt, I love the Taylor Swift thread, but none of the Taylor Swift lyrics are actually applicable to a baseball stadium. Not really, but it's a really cool concept. I love it. I love it. It's just
Some of them are. There's one in Pittsburgh. It's like high in the sky with Pennsylvania under me.
okay.
So
You
if
may
you've been
have
in
me
the
on that
press
one.
box, it's not low in
Okay.
the sky. It's way up.
Okay.
Where was I?
I have no idea what we were talking
We're
about. We got
3
to
minutes
Taylor
in and
Swift
I'm
very
off track.
quickly.
Oh, right. Vibes.
Oh,
Um,
we're always we are nothing if not
this
merchants of
podcast is about
vibes,
nothing
Curt.
but vibes. And I will say, like, even I think when the Brewers were playing bad and they did not look like a great team,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
um, and you have all these questions, like, I still think underneath it all was this like this lying phrase, the subliminally lying phrase of like, well, it's not a phrase that's not telling the truth. It's just lying there underneath the weeds. Let me get that out first. But it's saying that like this year, if the Brewers win, it's just going to be because things happen. Like that's how this whole season's operating. We're in the Pat Murphy era now, where we throw logic and rationality and like numbers and all that stuff. We kind of just toss it out the window to a large degree. This is a different era of Brewers baseball. Like they're winning in large part because of vibes. That's what they do well. That's their strength. um, and so if they're gonna win it all this year, we're not crunching a bajillion numbers and trying to, figure out who's gonna pitch the sixth inning. We're just assuming if it happens, it's just gonna be meant to happen. And I think that provides a little bit of like a lifeboat during the doldrums of the season.
I'm not entirely sure what that means, but I'm gonna say that of the things we did say on last week's podcast, um, a couple things were true. First of all, neither one of us thought they were going to lose their lead in the division, which I believe was like 5 games. It's 7.5 as we head into the new week. Might have been 4.5, because we believe that was a really healthy lead, and it is a healthy lead. The other thing is, and I actually I'll give myself credit. I feel like I should do that here. I said this. I said, really, really successful Major League Baseball teams really just, there's a chance they just get hot for like 6 weeks and then just do the 500 thing for the rest of the season. And that's good enough to be a playoff team. And that's what I thought we had with the Milwaukee Brewers. Think really what you could argue we still have. We have a team that got really hot early, built up this lead. They've now created a lead that is insurmountable. I mean, there's just no logical way. There's no logical way that the St. Louis Cardinals or anyone else in the NL Central can catch the Milwaukee Brewers. Now, there are illogical things that happen because it's Major League Baseball.
Screen record that, everyone. Go back, rewind 15, 30 seconds. Screen record JR saying this division is over.
I do not want to be wrong online. So
he's probably right, though. But if he's wrong, I need it to live in infamy.
I can't say it's over. But as I wrote on Twitter, it's awfully hard to melt an August snowman when they were up 8 games, which is not the case anymore, but it was on going into Sunday, up 8 games in the division in August. That feels really, really insurmountable. And, as much as the Brewers have been, I think, treading water for weeks, well over a month, I would say 6 to 8 weeks. All it takes is one good week where the switch flips and then suddenly that lead is replenished and the lead feels as healthy and as wholesome as it has ever been. That was this week. They won 5 of 6 games. Easily could have taken the 6th and looked very good and resonates with something you said last week. That's this offense has it in them. Like it's going to take them getting hot, but that's true of every team. Whoever enters the playoffs, it's going to take them being hot.
Yeah.
That's an offense that we saw this week. That's an offense that can absolutely go to the World Series, not just do well in the playoffs, but go to the World Series. Now, obviously, you have to see it at the right time. So it's not something we can say definitively you will have. But man, Joey Ortiz looked great. Sal Frelick looked great. Rhys Hoskins hit a timely home run. Jackson Chourio continued to
Frelick looked great.
Well, he had a.
What did he do?
No, I'm sorry. I'm talking about Garrett Mitchell.
Garrett Mitchell Garrett Mitchell looked pretty good. Okay.
I do get them a little confused.
I was like, did Sal Frelick get a barrel?
Sal Frelick did not get a barrel. He hit a ball really hard today, and I thought about it.
He did hit a ball hard Sunday, and I looked over at Jack Stern. He goes, not quite a barrel. So that was unfortunate.
I need Sal Frelick barrels. It's an inside joke, but I really love it. Mitchell has been really good. Joey Ortiz is back. Well, after 1 week, after this week, he looked really good. All these guys that have been struggling were not struggling anymore. William Contreras, Willy Adames, everything seemed to be clicking at once. I don't think you're going to get that the rest of the year, but right now it's hard not to feel just tremendous about the Milwaukee Brewers.
So did you really not understand my opening soliloquy here?
About the vibes?
Yeah.
That they are good just because baseball wants them to be?
You can try to, think ABC, XYZ, this is why this team can win a World Series. But if you do that, you're going to come to the sweeping, undeniable conclusion that this team's not good enough to play with the big boys at that level for like 3 or 4 series. However,
that was last week's podcast.
This week's podcast. However, this year's all about the vibes, JR.
Yeah.
And the vibes tell you that they can do it. So that's what I'm trying to get at. I'm sorry if that was not clear.
I think the Arizona Diamondbacks had those vibes last year when there's no one on earth who thought an 84-win team was going to go to the World Series. Probably the Phillies the year before that. They also happen to have some talent, but there's just these recent examples of teams that weren't even necessarily clicking when they got to the postseason, that weren't even, a team you would favor to go to the World Series. And now the Brewers are finally a team that's threatening to even get into that top tier where they're a half game. They entered Sunday a half game behind the Dodgers for a bye, for a first round playoff bye. And the Phillies were only a game and a half. The Phillies are in free fall. The Braves are in free fall. All these teams that are, the Padres and Diamondbacks are white hot, but all the teams that you expect to be up there are not running away with it. And the Brewers are just sitting there right there coming into Sunday with the best run differential in the National League. That's not just vibes. That's a really good baseball team.
Okay, yeah, that's probably the rational reason they can do it all is their run differential is really good, which means they're probably a really good team.
I don't know, as we dissect this, there's still part of me that wants to be like, hold on. They've had really bad weeks before, and we've been able to say, okay, well, this is the real stuff and this is the fake stuff. I don't want to roll this back and start going in any even perceptively negative direction and say, okay, they had a really good week, but this is the real stuff and this is the fake stuff. And the fact is the starting pitching is still just okay, but they got a little bit of a shot in the arm with DL Hall back. Not sure what his role is going to be. We saw him on Sunday. He did okay. in his first return after he had not been seen since April on the eternal rehab, as you wrote at jsonline.com. So I think that is a fair question to ask. As great as this week was, obviously they overperformed. But do you get the sense that some of this stuff is legitimately a good signs, like signs that Joey Ortiz might be a good example? Has Joey Ortiz legitimately turned a corner and will be returning to the April and May Joey Ortiz? Or was some of this stuff just, they just got hot and you hope that they can replicate this week in
I
September
mean,
because it's
yeah,
not going to
like
come this
the 42 runs in 29 innings thing,
probably not going to happen again.
that was largely everyone getting hot at the same time. But on a micro level, Joey Ortiz hit for power. He drove the ball. Like it was the version of May Joey Ortiz that we have not seen since like mid-June. I think I wrote today in the game, or I think it was 4 extra base hits in his last 6, and he had 4 in his previous 30. So that's a big sign. Yeah, like there's a we can touch on them all. I mean, there's just a ton of guys that played really well this week, but there is a ton of like those performances that were like, oh yeah, that looks good. And Rhys Hoskins, like the overall numbers are going to be a little underwhelming, as we've talked about. Yet at the end of the day, it's moments like Saturday's homer, which is why you got Rhys Hoskins. When the playoffs come around, they're just going to have that guy with that bat and that playoff experience in the middle of the lineup. And that's something I don't think they had last year, and they didn't have in 2021. And they maybe they had it in 2019 when Ryan Braun was around, but like it's just little individual players and performances and like profiles like that, especially on the offense. You add them together, and it's like, yeah, this is a pretty solid unit. They don't really have this team just doesn't have a big hole, and that's probably what they do best. That's why they're in every game.
Yeah, you're right.
When they click, they beat the crap out of teams. They beat the crap out of good teams on their fields, like we saw this week. And when they're bad, they're really not that bad. They just
right.
kind of don't score a ton of runs and lose some close games. So they haven't had a 4-game losing streak this year. That no team did that last year. Nobody else has done it this year. So I don't know, like, we want to get into playoff talk again, like how that generally pretends in October, but that's how this team is built.
This is going to sound like a backhanded compliment, but just kind of piggybacking off what you're saying, they haven't gotten into a rut where they just completely suck for
They don't.
6
Yeah,
weeks and lose all
the
that
thing
stuff.
the Brewers do best is they don't suck. There we go.
Right, that's exactly right. They would go 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, but they got swept one time this year by the Phillies in a 3-game set, and they would keep the like lingering. You can't gain 6 to 8 chunks in the standings if a team is still winning 1 out of every 3 games, because that's enough to linger. And then boom, they hit a switch and they win 5 straight. And now all of a sudden they've got their 18 games over 500 for their high water mark of the year, and they're basically running away with this division and can start positioning themselves for the postseason. It's this lack of not that 4-game losing streak is a big thing. Like, and most teams have much more than a 4-game losing streak. They've lost 5 or 6 or 7 in a row. Even the Padres that are white hot are doing this. I think they've won like 17 of 19 or something crazy. And just before that, they lost 5 straight games. That hasn't happened to the Brewers, and that's why they're in this position. Can we talk more about Jackson Chourio? I know we've done that a little bit, but
Yeah.
I feel like
what do
we
you want to talk
need.
about?
Well, do you think at this point he's going to get Rookie of the Year consideration? And we
He'll
talked
get
about
votes. He'll get votes.
Yeah, you don't think it's quite to that point because
I mean,
Jackson Merrill is still really good.
It could and will get interesting with the way the Pirates are trending right now. You think they're going to let Skeens pitch out the rest of the season when they're
torpedoing
12 games back in 2 weeks? Like, they did the thing the Pirates do, unfortunately for them, which is they trade for players when they're kind of in the race,
and then
they tank, and they stink.
I loved their deadline. I would have loved the Brewers to have had their deadline, and then they can't do anything with it. Like Brian De La Cruz and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, sure. There's
the whole big thing on the deadline again. Like, how much do you really add to your team? And we can get into that with the Brewers. Probably could use another frontline arm. Didn't get it. But like, what else did they really need for this team to get to the playoffs? Nothing. Nothing. But yeah, I mean, Skeens, if he tops out if he makes another 3-4 starts and then he's done. Um, Jackson Merrill is incredible, but Jackson Chourio is also pretty dang good. And is this where I say to the name Tobias Myers?
That was going to be my segue.
I mean, it's
So
sneaky. It's sneaky if he pitches like this for another month and a half.
Tobias Myers is not going to win the Rookie of the Year. If the pitcher really does get,
Well,
oh come on, you cannot convince me of that. Now,
well,
Paul Skeens could shut it down tomorrow, and he'll still get Rookie of the Year votes because he basically
oh,
was baseball's biggest
absolutely,
story in the middle of the summer.
absolutely,
Tobias
absolutely.
Myers is not that, but Curt, I do think he gets some votes now, right? Tobias.
I mean, we'll see what happens over the next month and a half, but yeah, he's on pace to make like 24 starts, pitch. Let's see how many innings he's at. He's at 93 innings, so 120 innings or so, 130 innings. Not a ton,
No, that's probably still
but
pretty small workload there.
that would be 130 innings would be enough to like if your ERA is under 3, if it's in the 2.7s, 2.8s, which means he pitched incredible for the last month and a half. Yeah, he would be in consideration. I mean, he's been the Brewers' best pitcher. We talked about this a little last week when they pulled him
Keep
in the
saying it.
5th. Like, you pulled the guy because he's not Freddie Peralta in that spot. Freddie Peralta would have gotten the 6th in that game. They pulled him because he's a young guy, but he's not like he's not just a young guy. He's their best pitcher right now.
Mhm.
And
That's
Colin
right.
Ray's incredible, been incredible, and I still think I would give him the ball in game 1. But Tobias Myers is their best pitcher.
Are we past the point with Ray and Myers? Because we've admired them pretty much all season long. Is it still defense? Is it still a little smoke and mirrors? Is it still outperforming your peripherals? Or are these two guys legitimately, because we're starting to
Yeah.
talk about a real rotation here, and these
Well,
guys are legitimate guys.
it's I don't want to pray only at the altar of FIP
Yeah.
in answering this question, but if we do look at that, it'll probably give us a little better depiction.
Well, and FIP,
To,
FIP is okay on them. It's
Tobias
not
Myers has a 4.12 FIP, so that's a 1.33 difference. Colin Ray. Colin Ray's at a 4.26 FIP, which is just a little under 1 point difference. I mean, like that's going to be the case for these, especially Colin Ray. Tobias Myers' strikeout numbers aren't incredible either, but like guys that have the ball in play, they're going to be helped by this defense for the most part. So I don't really use that as a knock against them. And the other thing that's not really smoke and mirrors about it is the way these guys are pitching now is different than the way they were pitching 2-3 months ago. I think when Tobias
Yeah.
Myers first came back up, even like that 8 shutout against Detroit, he's a different guy than he was in that start. Colin Ray's a different guy too, getting swing and miss and like getting swing and miss. So yeah, there's probably still a little smoke and mirrors there. Like, would I expect either of these guys to finish with their season ERAs where it is now? Probably not. I would expect it to take a little bump up, and that's fair and probably to be expected. But like, I don't want to undersell what they're doing and like how good they actually are. There's a lot we could go on Tobias Myers. I feel like by this point, you and I have a really like deep understanding of Tobias Myers and his arsenal and like what works for him, which is probably not what we expected to say in March and April. Um, but maybe that'll be a special extra pod so we don't spend the next 10 minutes talking about what Tobias Myers is doing really well.
The Tobias Myers episode. Again, this is a guy that wasn't even like remotely in consideration coming out
The
of spring training.
second round of cuts in
Second
spring.
round of cuts.
Spent all of all of last year in double A.
Yeah, this is a guy that was kind of intriguing depth. We liked him. We said that when he was pulled up. We were really excited when he came up to the team.
Before he
He
got
did,
pulled up.
I know. Yes, he didn't even pitch that first time. He came up to the team as depth. They sent him back
Do,
down.
do you think Pat Murphy knew who he was that day?
I
This
don't
guy
know.
is here. He could pitch if this game goes to 13 innings. Do you think he knew who
I
he
think
was?
I think Murphy has a pretty good recall on stuff. Like he knew him from spring training. That's what I think. I think yes. I think he did know who he was.
Did he know like what pitch he threw? What pitches he threw? Probably not.
I'm gonna guess he probably had some vague idea, but wasn't thinking. He probably. I'm sure he didn't know what Myers's like best pitch was, or the pitch that he would throw the most, or anything like that. I don't know. We were excited when he showed up. We thought he could really help this team. I did not think he would ever at any point become the best pitcher on this staff. And I think you're still going to have people pushing back when we say that out loud. You're going to have people who are like, Freddie Peralta is the best pitcher on this team. He may not live up to the
Of course,
expectations.
Freddie Peralta is the best pitcher on this team,
Yes,
but he's not their best
exactly.
pitcher.
That's right.
Does that make sense?
Right. Well, it's going to. I mean, we're going to have to come down to this conversation with who pitches in the playoffs. And it's way too early for that.
Yeah, we'll see what Freddie does on Monday. This will be a really big start for him. I feel like we need to see some really good signs from him that we have not seen for a while. It feels like we're at a point with Freddie where I'm not expecting the big jump. Maybe it's in there, but we're 4 months into this thing and it's like this, it's the same film. And you don't like the ending.
Right.
The same issues that are bugging him.
Even when he's effective, he doesn't. He struggles to get clean innings. Like not just with runners on, but like he'll throw a 1, 2, 3 inning, but he threw 26 pitches to do it. That's been the same story every year, or all year. After the first 4 starts, he was amazing the first 4 starts of the year, and it just hasn't been the same since then. So, it is definitely to the point where when Freddie pitches, I don't think as a Brewers fan you could feel like, oh, that's their best, that's an arm that's going to give them a really good chance to win. I think it's more like, oh, Freddie's pitching. You hope to see maybe some improvement that we have.
It's in there still.
Of course.
And in a playoff start, you absolutely still believe that he could turn into gem. Mm-hmm. No doubt. I mean, he'll be like, get him in a playoff game, he'll probably be like sitting 96, 97, which would be kind of fun to see this year. But yeah, it feels like we're watching the same things burn him game after game. Whereas a guy like, Tobias Myers comes up, this kid's a rookie. And the thing he does really, really well is he figures out like on the fly what he has, what he doesn't have, and how he's going to somehow get you through 5 innings and keep this team like really close in the game, keep the ball in the ballpark, and try not walking guys. And that's impressive. That's the most impressive thing about this kid is he's figured that out pretty quickly after getting hit around early on.
And I don't remember if I said this on the last podcast, but I said it somewhere. With Devin Williams coming back, Trevor McGill at some point, you hope will be back. Brian Hudson is on the doorstep of returning now. DL Hall is here as kind of this wild card starter / long reliever. Joe Ross is now a reliever. We think Jacob Mizorowski will be here as a reliever. And both of us would love to see Craig Yoho here as a reliever.
Okay, so this is what I mentioned something to you before the show, and then you asked me to follow up, and I didn't. It was this. I know you've been busy tonight. Did you see Miz and did you see Yoho?
I didn't. Tell me about them.
Oh, JR. Well, Yoho struck out the side in his 1 inning. He was throwing changeups with 51 inches of vert and like extremely 19 boring. Inches of run.
Tell me something new.
He's at AAA. He's at AAA now, and
these are real hitters.
The exact same as it did in Wisconsin. It's like low A to him again, high A to him again, double A to him again. So that's interesting. And then Ms. JR pitched, I think, at 5 outs through 2 balls. What do you think about that? What do you think about that?
That's new. That's something I haven't heard before.
It was his first. I believe it was his first ever game out of the bullpen too. Honestly, probably like in his baseball life.
Can they get on an airplane? Because we've been saying this about Craig Yoho since he was in Wisconsin. That is a guy who can help the big league team this year. That's how good he is. And now he's at AAA, lighting people up. We know Mizorowski's just the ceiling on him is so high, and there's variables for sure. But if you have all those guys available in your bullpen, and by the way, Yoel Payamps is dealing again. If you have all those guys, what do you need your starters for? You need them for 4 innings, maybe in a playoff game.
I'm glad you brought up Payamps because last week the trust tree was being beaten by the elements and the wind and the rain.
Struck by lightning.
However, Yoel Payamps, he's climbing the trust tree. This man is what do they call it? A repeller? I don't climb.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
When you climb, climbing? You rappel? Is that a thing?
Yeah, rappelling? Sure. You rappel down the cliff.
Rappel down. So what about up?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's just climb, right? Or ascend?
Ascend. Yeah, he's ascending.
He's
That's a
ascending.
much less cool word.
You know, my neighbors are rock climbers. They go on big trips like to Yellowstone and things like that. I am gonna pause this podcast. I'm gonna go
No,
ask them.
I'm gonna text one of my friends is a big climber. I'm gonna text him.
Yeah.
What's the
Um,
word?
rock climbing is just not a thrill that I seek. Mainly because my upper body is made of goo, so I don't imagine it would be something that I could physically seek out, but it's just not for me. Um, we need, while you're sending that text, to talk about Willie Adames a little bit because he has been great. He had 4 homers again this week, including 2 on Monday, and has really had a just a really nice year. It's not like otherworldly, it's not, silver slugger, but it's really good. And I have 2 questions about him. I wonder if there is any scenario where he could in fact be back next year. If they could find a way to sign him back, because I don't think there is. I think he's going to be too expensive, and the Brewers have backup plans in mainly Joey Ortiz as shortstop, maybe Bryce Terang if you squint hard enough, but well, you don't have to squint actually that hard. I mean, it's feasible. So and Joey Ortiz is so smooth defensively. I really think it'll be okay. The other question though is like Willie Adames' defense has been kind of bad this year, or at least to his standards, kind of bad. We're talking about a guy who's been one of the most elite defensive shortstops always. He made another error on Saturday, and it's just been kind of weird. Like it's not, routine plays. There's a play on Sunday where he got the out, but it was like, it just wasn't smooth anymore. And I don't know if that's just anecdotal. I don't know which defensive stats I really need to trust. I know some of them I think are picking up on this too. I don't know what's going on there, but I don't know if that'll impact whether or not the Brewers bring it back or not. Probably not. But what's up? Are you
Eyes
noticing this too?
eyes plus is this
Eyes plus?
newfangled metric.
Are you making that up?
Yeah, I am. It's what
Okay.
my eyes tell me. I've
Nice.
become an old man, like my 3rd year in the BBWA, and I think every stat stinks.
Do you think the BBWAA card makes you like age into that? Like it makes you an old man who
Oh,
yells at clouds and doesn't
I'm
follow
like
stats?
I'm like super self-aware of this too. It's not like
Amazing.
just happening in my subconscious. I'm fully aware when I watch games and I'm like, I'm an old man now. I hate that. Except for bunting. I haven't gotten there with bunting. Like I haven't gotten to like bunting yet.
Oh, you
Most of
still
the
hate
time that I
bunting.
most of the time that a guy squares, I'm like, "You are stupid. Stop doing that. Swing
Sure.
away." The Brewers did it twice in Atlanta, and they hit homers in the same at bats. Come on now, kids.
Incredible
Let's
stuff.
learn a
Stop
lesson.
bunting. Stop
Chourio was
bunting.
still
That will
trying to
always
bunt
make
on
sense.
Sunday. Stop doing that. Hit a homer. My
Mhm.
God. Um,
Did Perkins try to bunt with Rhys Hoskins on third or Gary Sanchez on
it
third? What
was
are they
with
doing?
I think it was with Contreras.
Still
Well,
not a
he
good
grounded
idea.
out to second, so
And it ended up being an out
Perkins.
anyway. I
Okay,
don't know.
well, that one I yeah.
There's a
I'm
window there.
ambivalent on that bunt.
Okay.
Anyway, where was I? Defense. Yeah, Willie Thomas's defense has been, I don't want to say bad, but he's had a lot of bad plays.
Mm,
And that is kind of alarming. Like errors are not a good stat for like evaluative reasons, but in this case, I don't know what his total numbers errors are, probably like 15 or so. It does feel like it sort of tells a story. Like he's just making bad plays, and it's unusual to see from him. It's on like hard grounders, and he's like one-handing them and not coming up with them clean. Like the throwing still feels like it's been mostly fine.
mhm.
Like there was a play that Rhys Hoskins didn't make in Sunday's game that would have been a really nice play from Adames, and he gave him a really easy short hop, and Hoskins just couldn't come up with it. Would have been a good play for Willie to make. Um, but yeah, it's been kind of bizarre to watch. Maybe he'll turn it around, but it's like it's a trend at this point to watch with him. And or I guess the first part of your question, which I'm answering
Yeah.
second, is no, he's not back next year.
There's no scenario.
No, you like look at the situation, right? Willie and his reps 2 off seasons ago saw what the market is for shortstops. Now, who knows if the market's going to end up being the exact same? Year to year, it plays out different, and we don't know. But he's going to be the best shortstop on the market, I think, right? Unless there's someone I can't think of that's going to be out
Mm,
there. One of the best offensive players on the market. He's going to be 28, 29. The comp is out there. It's Dansby Swanson money. And he's known this for 2 years that's the contract that he deserves, and that's what he's going to want. And the Brewers, not to say they haven't had interest in bringing him back, like there's certainly been interest in bringing him back, but they've known the price. They haven't met the price. So they're not going to now meet the
Change their
price
mind.
above everybody else in baseball. No, it's just, and that's okay. Like, it's okay sometimes to lose players to free agency.
Mhm. Essentially, that is what happened with Corbin Burns, and I'm sure even though we discussed last week if that was maybe a bad idea, the Brewers, I think, will tell you that it was a good one because, even though Corbin Burns has been shoving, they have gotten pretty good value out of that, so we'll see quite how good. We won't know that for a couple of years, but, especially if
Um,
Joey Ortiz is back, man.
rock climbing full circle here.
Mm.
My friend Ross said that it's just called ascending.
Oh my gosh, I was right.
The
Maybe I could
if you are doing the correct moves, he said it's called beta.
that's a fish or a old VCR player. I don't like it. I'm gonna go with ascending because that's what I said and it makes me feel really smart. As you may know, Kurt, over the past 2 weeks, I've been really, really knowledgeable about a lot of sports that I do not normally watch. So, as you mentioned, Dansby Swanson, shouts to his wife Mallory. Since we are not a pro Cubs podcast, we will say that the certainly the better athlete in the family. She, of course, had the big goal for the women's soccer team to win gold. Excellent
Well,
work.
you don't even have to be you don't have to have a anti-Cubs tilt, JR,
No, well,
to acknowledge
I
that.
just, yes, I just didn't want to acknowledge Dansby Swanson. Is kind of how
Yeah.
that went. Just purely
Like, your
Mallory.
wife's a better athlete than you. This is just a fact of life.
100%.
This is just a fact of life.
100% true. Thank God, because thank God, because otherwise I couldn't go through watching my children play sports the way that I played sports. It would be absolute pain. I don't know how my parents did that and kept a straight face. You know, they had to have just laughed there. Laughing would have been the only way to get through that without being humiliated watching me play sports. But you know, my kids can hold their own. They're certainly better than I was for sure. So that's nice. Um, all right, I think we're here. I think we're at 3 up, 3 down. We can now go into some of the more granular details from the week that was this excellent week of baseball. Here it is, 3 up, 3 down. Curt, let me get this going. Devin Williams got his first save of the year on Saturday. That was against the Cincinnati Reds. Devin Williams owns the Cincinnati Reds. He has a 1.07 ERA against the Cincinnati Reds. He has not allowed a home run. You had the stat about how long it's been since the Reds got a hit off of Devin Williams. We often, as I think people who follow one team, can really isolate in on the guys who just whip up on other teams or whip up on the Brewers specifically. Like, you know who the Brewers killers are. I don't know if we're all as attuned to who who on the Brewers kills other teams specifically. Devin Williams kills the Cincinnati Reds. It's kind of a sight to behold, don't you think?
Yes, the swing and miss play.
You have- I love the pregnant pauses. Those are good ones.
He's like, it's actually kind of unfair
Mhm.
how much someone there did something wrong to him a while back,
Yeah,
and he hasn't
he has an
forgotten.
agenda. He has an
Yeah.
agenda. All right, what's your number one?
You mentioned it early, but we didn't go into it. DL Hall's outing Sunday. I don't know.
Mhm.
You were driving back from Kentucky, so I don't know how much you consumed of this
Didn't
game
see it live.
visually.
Didn't see it live.
No,
Caught some highlights. That's all we got.
I thought it was sneaky good,
Tell me more.
like, projection wise.
Okay.
The fastball shape was nice. No one could touch his slider. Like, and early on in the first, like before the lineup turned, they really had no chance against him unless he was walking them, which of course is always the DL Hall question. How many guys is he going to walk? Is he going to hit TJ Friedel left on left with 2 outs and 2 on to set up Santiago Espinal, who can bloop a hit against him? Like, that was honestly for me the turning point in that game. Is like, he hit Friedel. It's the command. But not only do I feel good about DL Hall as a start, more like as better about DL Hall as a long-term starter than I did coming into the day, like getting a chance to see him moving down the mound, like looking healthy, seeing the 4-pitch mix really work. Like, he's got 4 solid pitches. But the short term is interesting too. Get this guy a couple innings out of the bullpen, see what he can do. It's a tantalizing piece. It was not a great outing, but the stuff and the command outside of a couple blips too, like, for the most part, the command was pretty good. He just lost it in certain instances. I thought it was just a generally, like, positive outing for a guy whose first 4 outings were like, this this is the guy? This is the guy they got for Corbin Burns?
Yeah.
this is not what they said he was going to be. So it was nice to see like a little more of what we think DL Hall should and could be.
The Brewers rotation has just been, scrambling for bodies to even get a 5-man rotation. And now, if DL Hall can work 3-4 innings to start, they kind of have a 6-man rotation. Joe Ross, again, who pitched on Sunday, has kind of been moved now to a multi-inning relief role, kind of the role that Jacob Junis was holding. And I thought he was pretty good on Sunday, other than he did give up a walk where he worked ahead of, I think it was Stevenson, worked way ahead of him and then walked him. That loaded the bases. Sac fly ends up being the winning run. So again, a walk comes into play there, but they kind of are back to a 6-man rotation, and that's a good place to be. My number 2 will be Rhys Hoskins' homer in that same game on Saturday night, the 1-0 win over the Cincinnati Reds. Rhys Hoskins hits the bomb. He's been Johnny on the spot for some home runs this year. He and Willie Adames have the clutch gene activated. It feels like they are always hitting these big time home runs. So that is I believe that was a 2-out strike in the 8th against the Reds bullpen. But the thing that really I loved about it, probably most of all, was Bob Uecker's radio call. He does not do every home game anymore. He is on a very select schedule, kind of just, it seems like it's just kind of as available if he's feeling up to it. He is 90 years old and he is at liberty to do what he'd like with his schedule. But he was there for that 8th inning home run. And I tell people, like, if there's a big home run, you want Bob Uecker on the call. It was heavily circulated on social media, the call. Pretty standard stuff from the great Mr. Baseball Bob Uecker when there's a big 8th inning home run like that. Just awesome, goosebumps inducing. And once again, a really nice hit for Rhys Hoskins. As we mentioned, the overall numbers are not good, but he is hitting for power, and that has really aided this team in some really, really big spots this year. It does it again. What a night Saturday was with the Contreras jersey giveaway. It's a 1-0 game. It's pretty intense stuff all the way around.
Yeah, Pat Murphy talked about that pregame Sunday, just like talking about Bob Uecker and how cool it is. And you're like, yeah, this is pretty cool. This is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
He's still doing it and doing it at a high level. The offense scored, as we said, 42 runs in 29 innings. And the thing I want to bring up from it is not what you would expect. It's Gary Sanchez.
7-game hitting streak.
Gary Sanchez has like been a sneaky, really good hitter since coming back from the injured list.
Yes.
Like when he's hitting the
and
ball,
not just against lefties, which is impressive.
and not just power either.
I know.
Yeah, he had a 2 or 3 run homer to get him back in the game in Washington late. That was against a righty, I think. Was that Finnegan? No, it was whatever. It was probably a righty though. He's get the man some more playing time. I mean, they kind of are right now too, finding ways to get him in the lineup. It's I think, like, on the whole, people are probably not overly impressed with his season, but he's a good piece for the lineup.
I think he's exactly what they signed him to be, and that's a guy who can hit lefties. He's a backup catcher. He's credible as a backup catcher. No one's going to say he's the best defensive catcher in baseball, but I think he's kind of at William Contreras' level. I think they're about comparable, and the guy can hit. He's done this in his career. This is what he does. And he is doing that right now for them. I am impressed that the Brewers have been able to keep 3 catchers on this roster and found a way to make that work. It actually was essential on Sunday because they took Gary Sanchez out as a pinch runner, and then, like, one batter later, William Contreras gets ejected. And if they didn't have Eric Haas, that would have been an adventure. I am not sure what they would have done. So that was a fun, quirky little
Sal Frelick. The answer is always Sal Frelick.
Oh my gosh, I can't see it. Self-relic, yes. The answer to everything. You need a third baseman, second baseman, catcher, sure.
Okay, okay. This is an aside. While you're on that thought, like a month and a half ago, when Joey Ortiz got hurt, I asked Murph about if we're gonna see the Sal Frelick experiment a little more, and he looked at me and he goes, "Experiment? You keep calling it that. Do you not think it can? You don't think it can work?" And I'm like, Murph, I'm not making a comment on whether or not it can work. I'm simply saying these eyes have not seen it out there. Therefore, it is still an experiment until it's proven to work or not work.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's still an experiment. We haven't seen it. I don't know if we're ever going to see it, which is too bad.
Yeah, I don't either. I would be surprised, but I guess it's feasible. It's feasible, especially if you want to get a left-hander into the lineup late in some playoff game or something. Maybe they stuff them over there for an inning or two. I don't know, but I am glad that they have found a way to keep the 3 catchers going, because all three of them are doing their job. You know, you don't want to say goodbye to Eric Haase at this. Eric Haas, I keep calling him Hazy. Had a friend who had the same spelling and it was Hazy, so this is tripping me up. But Eric Haas, you don't want to get rid of him at this point. He's doing too much. And again, to send him or Gary Sanchez off the roster right now would be a DFA situation. You would lose them, so you cannot simply send them to AAA and stash them. This has worked out for them. So I think you have a number 3 yet, and then we wrap it up.
Yeah, this is not my number 3, but on the catcher situation, I think I'm ready. I'm ready for 2 catchers.
Oh, really? Well, you're not going to get it because they only have to survive another 3 weeks, and then this rosters expand.
That's true. That's true. Craig Yoho's season
It's time.
Will be upon us.
It's time.
Colin Ray, JR, game 1 starter was.
You said that last week.
A take posited by someone here before his gate got changed on the fly.
And your audio cut out.
And the connection cut out. So.
Are you saying that the gate change caused your audio to cut out, or are you saying you hung up on me?
No, I got a call that my gate was getting changed by my traveling fellow.
Oh, I see.
So, like, Curt, hello, you there? I ignored the first 2 calls so I could get my takeout, and then the third call's like, oh boy, something bad happened. We got delayed like 5 hours. Nope.
So you really did drop the mic on me. You said Colin Ray, game 1 starter, said a couple words, and then you were gone.
Yeah, and then I shut it off, and I ran to my new gate at BWI Airport. Anyway,
what you do for this podcast is like get your takes off, and then running from gate to gate is beautiful. It really is. It really is inspiring.
I'm solely here to drop, not just drop takes, actually, to convey the vibes. That's really what our jobs are.
We are purveyors of vibes, merchants of vibes.
Yes, we receive the vibes and we pass them along. Number 3, JR. You know what? Actually, I started Colin Ray. I'm gonna say that for Curt Blanche. I just had an idea pop up
because he did have 7 shutty. Colin
Ray had 7 shutty, and he deserves our respect and our time, as I've been saying.
Colin Ray takes of the week. Interesting.
Yeah. No, this is not Curt Blanche. This is just this is my final throw up through down.
Right.
7 shutty against the Braves.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saving Colin Ray.
No. I'm saving the idea that popped in my head. Sorry. Let's get this back on track. He was facing the Braves for a 2nd straight start, which you would generally think would not be great for the pitcher. They've seen him recently. That doesn't apply to Colin Ray. He can mix and match. He's got 5 different pitches. He'll throw them in any count to any hitter from either side. He doesn't care. He does not fit into your box.
It's true.
He is good.
He's good. Him and Myers.
Do you remember when we first talked about him on this podcast?
No. What did we say?
If you do, that's sick, but I do.
I don't even remember if he came from Korea or Japan. Now that
I'm pretty sure you didn't know who he was.
That's probably true.
When they called him up, I think you sent me a message that was like, "Who?"
That happens.
This
happens.
Fellow
even at
is
AAA.
In the Brewers organization.
Can I be honest with you, Kevin Herget? I had not.
Oh yeah, no, we were in the same boat on. We were pretty much in the same boat on that one.
You knew who he was though.
No, okay, considering this is my job, it was minimally. I knew he was like in the back of my head. I knew that they signed this guy named Kevin Herget.
Yeah,
late in spring training. That's all.
I get it.
Colin Ray. That's all.
That's it. That's the one. All right, that'll do it for 3 Up, 3 Down. Here are the things we could have talked about. We could have talked about Jackson Chourio becoming the youngest player in baseball to hit 2 home runs in a game since Vladimir Guerrero in 2019. Youngest player in Brewers history, supplanting Hank Aaron in that regard. We did, that would have normally been something we mentioned, but we did have a Jackson Chourio segment earlier. I just want to make sure that gets out there. Brian Hudson is going to be back any minute from his oblique injury. I expect to see him very, very early in this week. So that will add something to the to the bullpen at just the right time with the Dodgers, the pesky Dodgers that got him a couple times last time out. They will be at American Family Field for a 4-game series to start the week. Cleveland coming to town, so this is going to be a tough stretch. What else? We mentioned Payamps has been really good, 0.93 ERA in his last 11 games. It's so good. Jakub Unish pitched against the Brewers.
Revenge game.
He looked really good.
Bryce Terang homered.
That's right. Bryce Terang homered. A huge, huge unexpected step forward. Of course, then after that home run, the offense turned off the spigot. They went like the final 7 innings of that
No,
game
yeah,
and
we
then
we
one
kinda
run in
glossed
9
over
innings.
that. We kinda glossed over the fact they scored
Yeah.
4 runs in their final 25 innings
Like
of the
26
series,
innings.
24
Yeah.
innings.
Rough finish. Rough finish. We'll pretend that didn't happen. Hobie Miller's on the injured list. I kind of was starting to think that might be it for him on the roster. So the injury saves him a spot for now because
If I
it was
speak,
looking a little tough. Yeah.
I'm in
They got a
trouble.
lot of left-handers. Hudson and DL Hall, like they're lefties, and Hobie. I love Hobie. We love Hobie. The contact was starting to get a little solider lately, and so we'll see what happens with this injury and if he's able to make it back to the roster this year. But I think they kind of need that spot, so we'll see how that goes.
For
Also,
someone like
Brewers
Craig
on
Yoho?
yes, or Jacob Mizorowski, who's going to need a
So,
spot.
okay, so when Craig Yoho inevitably gets called up at some point, I'm not even know if I'm not gonna say it's gonna happen this year. Like, actually,
Yeah,
the vibe I've kind of gotten from conversations is that he's not so much like the plan A, it's
hmm,
Mizorowski that's the plan A. Like, that's
sure,
the traditional
sure.
guy that you call up late in the season. Um, but Yoho seems like he's gonna pitch his way here.
I
But
think so.
anyway, when he gets here, what are we gonna like? What are we gonna do with ourselves? We have nothing. We have nothing left. Then that's been
We're
the
gonna
whole premise of this podcast for 5 months.
We're gonna have 10-minute
Is
podcasts. You know
yeah.
what we should do is we'll
I mean,
check in on how many home runs Keston Hira has right now in the Angels organization
yeah. Is he
because
still
there's a
red
lot.
hot? He got
I have no
outrighted. He
idea.
got outrighted, but I think he
Yeah,
accepted his assignment because he didn't have to because he'd already been outrighted before.
it's a tough career arc right now, I'm afraid. Also, Brewers
It's
on
gonna
golf
happen.
carts in the Brewers on golf carts Saturday out in the crowd with the tailgaters. I thought that was really cool. Nice touch, handing out T-shirts and whatnot, and hanging out with unsuspecting fans. We had a story at jsonline.com from Hannah Kirby that I really enjoyed. All right, that'll do it. Let's go back in time. It's the annual or weekly rather visit to Brewers Past. Let's remember when. Two things got me thinking about the 1992 Rookie of the Year for the Milwaukee Brewers. One is Jackson Chourio being a candidate for Rookie of the Year in 2024. Again, don't suspect he'll win, but he's in the conversation. The other was Carson Spires pitching for the Cincinnati Reds. It did not go well for him. He is the nephew of one Bill Spires, former shortstop for the Milwaukee Brewers, infielder for the Milwaukee Brewers. And I got to thinking about that because I know Bill Spires had surgery to repair a herniated disc in his back in November of 1991. And that, my friend, opened the door for a young shortstop named Pat Listash to take his place on the opening day roster. Actually, that's not true. It wasn't on the opening day roster because he was called up one game into the season. Joey Weimer vibes. He was called up for game 2 and ended up, going 3 for 4 in that first game and never gave that job back in the 1992 season. Actually, I believe Bill Spires became the 5th straight Brewers shortstop to lose his job because of injury. It's a pretty good list, actually. Robin Yount, Ernie Riles, Dale Swaim, Gary Sheffield, happened to all of them. Listash was a kind of an unexpected star. He was drafted in the 5th round in 1988 out of a Louisiana school. He was called up in April. Became the first Brewer to steal 50 bases. He had 54, easily the franchise record. The previous one had been 45 by Paul Molitor in 1987. But he still ranked second in the league to another rookie, Kenny Lofton of the Cleveland. Well, they were the Indians at the time, but Cleveland. And Kenny Lofton, I think a lot of people thought was going to win the Rookie of the Year, but that is not what happened. Pat Listash, all 5'9", 170 pounds, became the first Brewers player to win that award, which began in 1947, and he won it handily by 37 points over Kenny Lofton. He was the only player named on all 28 ballots. He received 20 first-place votes to Lofton's 7. Cal Eldred, another Brewer, actually got a first-place vote that year. He batted .290, 47 ribbies, 93 runs scored, those 54 stolen bases. It was the highest batting average for a rookie. He was 25 years old. He'd won all the other rookie awards, so it wasn't like a one-off on the BBWAA's part. This is a guy who missed the first cut of spring training. Like, he was like Tobias Myers. He was out right away in spring training. Was going to play second base at AAA Denver, but again arrived the day after the opener. He'd only been a switch hitter for 3 seasons. He was a righty who gave switch hitting a shot. This was his 3rd season trying that, and he hit .271 as a left-hander that year. People liked how gritty he was. He got into a fight with George Bell, who was a pretty good player for the Chicago White Sox. He had punctured an eardrum late in the season, colliding with Greg Vaughn, and ended up still playing through it because he didn't want to miss the late season. That 1992 team was in the playoff hunt until the very end. The next season, he wore number 4 in honor of Paul Molitor, because Paul Molitor had kind of an acrimonious departure with the Brewers and was not back for the 1993 season. A lot of fans remember that. Molitor, of course, ended up being pretty good for the Toronto Blue Jays, World Series MVP and all that. But Listash switched his number to honor Paul Molitor to number 4. That didn't last very long. They ended up retiring Paul Molitor's number. But he had signed a 3-year contract, so there was a lot of future around Pat Listash. I think a lot of people look at those stats today and probably argue that he wasn't that like great of a player. Like he was a guy who kind of fit the bill at the time of the things that people liked, the batting average, the stolen bases, probably wasn't meant to last, but he also had a ton of injuries. He had hamstring, knee injuries. It really made it difficult for him to replicate what he did in 1992. And he spent a few more years with the organization, but ultimately kind of unceremoniously departed. He actually was named Rookie of the Year the day after the election in which Bill Clinton replaced George Bush in 1992. So that was kind of a wild time. He went to bed for hoping the votes went his way in a completely different thing the following morning. He ended up traded in 1996, the unceremonious departure, to the Yankees. The Yankees sent him back because they found out Listash had a broken foot. So they had to send Ricky Bonas instead to the Yankees and then ended up releasing him. Listash became a bench coach for the Cubs in 2011. He was a third base coach. He's been around the minors, been with a ton of organizations, managed in the Mexican League. He was with the Tacoma Rainiers in AAA for the Mariners. And this year, I believe, AAA bench coach for the Charlotte Knights. That's the White Sox organization. So we may still hear from him again. He's been around the block. He's been coaching in the big leagues, and he is definitely still around baseball. Very kind of charmed season, 1992 for Pat Listash, Rookie of the Year. It was the first Brewer to get it since we've, of course, had Ryan Braun and Devin Williams win that award as well.
Okay.
Any thoughts, Curt?
Okay, rapid fire thoughts on that. I have a lot.
Yes.
Number 1, Eric Karros won NL Rookie of the Year that year. He was worth 0.4 WAR. Goodness gracious. What in the world? Number 2.
What is Listash's WAR that year? I don't know.
So Pat Listash wore the number 4 the next year, you say. Which got me to thinking, no one's worn number 8, right? Since Ryan Braun.
Oh no, I would imagine that gets the Gantner treatment.
They're gonna Gantner it. They're Gantnering number 8.
Yeah, I think that's
except Ryan Braun was actually good.
Yeah, that's right. Jim Gantner played for a long time, but wasn't
lost
great.
half our listenership on that.
Yeah,
one.
I can't. Pat Listash was 4.5 WAR in 1992. That's something. That's not nothing. It's like the
Kenny Lofton probably should have won this award. You know what? Now looking at this now, Kenny Lofton should have won.
We know.
My third quick rapid fire thought. I've forgotten it, so let's move on to Curt Blanche.
Not so rapid. It was so rapid it flew
right out of your head. Rapid, and then I got sidetracked thinking of Ryan Braun.
Yeah, well, there's always time for more Ryan Braun, but yes. Okay, let's close this down the way we always do. It's with your take of the week. Curt's take of the week. It is Curt Blanche.
Should we unveil the curtain a little bit?
I always am in favor of the curtain going away.
The curtain is now gone. Okay. Friday night. This ended up actually saving me from myself a little bit.
Okay.
Friday night, JR, I had one story idea in mind. One story and one story only.
Okay.
I was committed to the bit.
After the game?
Yes, after the game. Brewers won 8-3. They had scored 42 runs. As we've talked about, 42 runs in 29 innings at one point. I wanted to talk to the hitting coach. Just to see,
Which one?
what their a hitting coach.
Okay.
Doesn't matter. They're both fine gentlemen. Talk to one of them about what's going on with this offense, what you think they're capable of, what's the ceiling, what's the floor, et cetera, et cetera. And was in the process of acquiring an interview with one of these fellows, which is allowed contractually. I don't know if it's a CBA or whatever, but reporters are allowed to request and talk to coaches after the game that are not the manager. A couple of Brewers players sniffed this out. They were standing over by where I was waiting. And getting updates from the Brewers crack PR staff, which was assisting me kindly in my efforts to talk to a hitting coach. And do we have a bleep button?
Yes, we can say bleep.
Okay. Well, that's our bleep button.
I can bleep you.
After the fact, okay. No, it's fine. I'll add the bleep myself. I won't make you do more work. The player looks over at me and goes, "Don't bleep and do it. Oh. Don't bleep and do it. Don't talk to the coach. You'll ruin the vibe. You'll jinx it."
Did they say vibe? Did he say vibe?
No, he didn't say vibe. But jinx.
Baseball players are
I
superstitious
was
blondes.
it was very apparent why they didn't want me to talk to him from the get-go, but it became more apparent as it went on. You ruin the winning streak, you'll ruin the offense's vibe.
Sad.
So I put up a little stink, but ultimately that was not the battle to fight. It was not the battle to fight with baseball players who are very superstitious. So I
Yeah.
put my hands up and I walked out of the room. I literally walked out of the room like this, hands up. All right. All right, officer, you win. I'm walking out of the room. My hands are up. I'm not going to talk to the hitting coach today. And I said, I better see a crooked number up there tomorrow. You know what number was up the next day? A very straight number, a number one.
Not crooked.
And then
No.
a 3 on Sunday. They did win on Saturday, so I guess like the argument worked for the players. They won. That's all that really matters. It's just very silly. It is very silly.
If we wanted to nitpick, we could say that their offense wasn't that good for the last 3 games of the week, Curt. We could say that. We'd have to start in the 4th inning Friday.
It was crazy though that they scored 4 runs. They scored only 4 runs over the final 2 games, and that happened without me talking to the hitting coach. Imagine how much worse it would have been
Fascinating.
if he had answered 5 questions from me.
I
was just perplexed at the nature of baseball players. Am perplexed. It's been like 48 hours, and I'm still like, that didn't make sense to me. I've talked about it on this podcast. Like, I like when things add up rationally.
Yeah, baseball players, 162 days. I think their brains get a little more sold on the superstition than needs to be. As I think I mentioned on this podcast, there was a stat in the game notes about how Willy Adames led the league with 8 3-run homers. Wade Miley had mentioned to one of the PR staff, oh, well, he's not going to hit another one because somebody pointed that out. Willy Adames hit a 3-run homer this week. He hit his 9th. So I don't think so.
I don't know what to tell you.
Actually,
I do know what to tell baseball players. It's that you should understand this better than anyone. This game is a game of variance. It happens. Yeah. That is the nature of the game.
Yes. Well, sometimes you just don't want to fight with Major League Baseball players.
No, most of the time. That is not something I desire to do.
Yeah. We will give shouts and flowers to Connor Dawson and Ozzie Timmons as they, they've done something right this year. This offense is okay. They're good. They're a good offense team that has struggled building that in the past, and they've figured it out a little bit. So nice for them. Curt, I think that's it. I think that's all we have. So we do not have any special guests this week. We are efforting for a really good one, a really fun one that I'm not sure is going to happen, but I'm pretty hopeful. Fingers crossed. Think it might. We're gonna.
Is it Craig Yoho?
I have to talk to him. I have to know how the Brewers were able to sign him for nothing in 2023.
Yeah, that when he gets called up, that'll be a must-listen pod.
I have to.
JR sits down with Craig Yoho for 20 minutes.
Craig, you're so good. How is it that they signed you for $10K?
Question one:
enabled them to do so many other things.
Are you aware of how much we've talked about?
Craig, are you a little disturbed by how much people talk about you and you've just been in the minors the whole time? Oh yeah, that's coming. I can't wait. We're still a few weeks away from that one, but I am. As soon as he gets called up, I am running to American Family Field to see if he's available for a podcast episode. Okay, hope you enjoyed this episode of Microbrew. I've got to get out of here. We are so over what I thought we were going to do. So we will. It's the Dodgers for 4. It's Cleveland for 3. Busy week for the Milwaukee Brewers. We'll see if they can keep those vibes going, and we will talk to you again next week. Bye, everybody.